From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight: Israeli planes continue bombing the Gaza Strip, with the recent targeting of a Palestinian ambulance leading to the death of 3 paramedics. To date, more than 1,055 Palestinians and 1,200 Israelis have been reported dead. According to Gaza Health Services, over 5,000 people have been injured so far. The violence is escalating further as rockets are fired from Gaza and confrontations occur at Israel's borders with Lebanon and Syria. A humanitarian crisis is brewing in Gaza. Notable hospitals like Al-Shifa Medical Complex are operating at full capacity. The region's sole power plant has been rendered inactive due to Israel's cutoffs, leaving Gaza in darkness. Many Palestinians are seeking shelter in packed schools and face shortages of necessities such as water and food. The UN warns that their reserves may deplete within 10 days. Accusations against Israel also include the use of prohibited white phosphorus in attacks. Horrifying instances of residential bombings without prior warnings have resulted in entire families being killed. In Beit Hanun, a mother is grieving the loss of her entire family after their home was struck. Residents say that the current offensive feels even more intense than Israel's 50-day assault on Gaza in 2014 due to the absence of evacuation provisions. Global responses include Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's strong condemnation of Israel's actions, describing them as a massacre. 5 world leaders, including President Joe Biden, have issued a joint statement expressing solidarity with Israel and condemning Hamas. Leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom, alongside the United States, recognized the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people and supported justice and freedom for Israelis and Palestinians alike. U.S. arms have started arriving in Israel as it carpet bombs Gaza. Jordan's King Abdullah said Wednesday no peace was possible in the Middle East without the emergence of an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. Hamas attacked Israel on Saturday, killing more than 1,200 people, including at least 14 Americans. Israel has responded with a siege and carpet bombing of the Gaza Strip, wiping out entire neighborhoods. The United Nations says at least 200,000 Palestinians have been displaced by the Israeli airstrikes. A coalition of student organizations at Harvard University has condemned Israel for violence. The statement, endorsed by the Harvard Undergraduate Palestine Solidarity Committee and 33 other student groups, calls Israel an apartheid system responsible for 75 years of violence against Palestinians. It notes that recent events did not occur in a vacuum and that for the last 2 decades, millions of Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to live in an open-air prison. The statement's strong language, including references to systemized land seizures and routine airstrikes, drew sharp rebuke from several corners. Ex-Harvard president and former U.S. Secretary of Treasury Larry Summers accused the letter of presenting Harvard as neutral towards acts of terror against Israel. Harvard Hillel, the campus Jewish center, called the statement a display of, quote, hatred and anti-Semitism. The Harvard Undergraduate Palestine Solidarity Committee stood by its statement, emphasizing its opposition to violence against civilians. The situation underscores the strong feelings surrounding the Palestine-Israel issue even within academic circles. New York City Muslims and some groups are voicing concerns about an increase in Islamophobic incidents, notably after a controversial statement from Mayor Eric Adams. Muslim women experienced verbal harassment while heading to a pro-Palestine event. Their experiences underline growing unease within the city's Muslim community. The situation escalated after Adams tweeted a strong condemnation of a pro-Palestine rally, suggesting participants were supporting terrorism. Groups including those of Muslims and Jews criticized his comments and argued that such remarks could stoke further hostilities against the Muslim community. Rabia Ali from the Council on American Islamic Relations said such official statements embolden hate against Muslims. Majlis al-Shura, an Islamic Leadership Council, has demanded removal of the mayor's tweet and a public apology. Acts of Islamophobia, already on the rise, are seen to be worsened by such remarks. Such experiences echo Islamophobic incidents that occurred after September 11, 2001. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib expressed sorrow over the loss of Palestinian and Israeli lives and criticized the U.S. for funding an apartheid government. Tlaib believes this funding perpetuates the cycle of violence. The U.S. government gives more than $3 billion in mostly military aid to Israel every year. Representative Cori Bush echoed Tlaib's sentiments, condemning the harm to civilians. She expressed her devastation over recent violent events and called for an end to U.S. support for Israel. Both Tlaib and Bush are facing backlash from fellow Democrats for labeling Israel an apartheid state. Tlaib, who is of Palestinian descent, advocated for ending the Gaza Strip blockade and the occupation. She emphasized the importance of acknowledging the hardship of living under siege and occupation and advocated for recognizing shared humanity to ensure safety for all. Israeli rights groups criticize Netanyahu for Gaza bombing. Details come after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. In the aftermath of Israel's strikes on Gaza, Israeli human rights organization Bet Shalom lambasted Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials for what they described as their criminal policy of revenge. Bet Shalom highlighted the impossibility of Gazans heeding Netanyahu's warnings to evacuate, given that the territory is sealed from all sides. With no shelters available, many have lost their lives, including at least 140 children and 105 women. The bombardment has turned hundreds of homes into ruins, displacing more than hundreds of thousands of residents and compromised essential services, including hospitals and schools. The organization previously criticized Hamas for its massacre of Israeli civilians. Bet Shalom underscored the taking of revenge and harming civilians goes against moral principles and international laws. Egyptian trucks loaded with essential aid and fuel meant for Gaza have had to turn back. This move follows a stern warning from Israel to Egypt, indicating any such convoys entering Gaza would be targeted for bombings. Sinai for Human Rights released exclusive footage showing the Egyptian trucks being stopped from accessing the Rafah border crossing after receiving Israeli threats. The Rafah crossing, which acts as a pivotal humanitarian corridor operated by the Red Crescent, has faced 3 Israeli airstrikes within the past day. This key entry point is the sole active gateway in and out of Gaza. It assists more than 2 million Palestinians living in the region. Israeli Channel 13 reported on Israel's threats to Egypt, although details remain limited. There's been no official comment from Egyptian authorities about these warnings. In related news, the United Nations World Food Programme is calling for the establishment of humanitarian corridors to ensure smooth entry of aid to Gaza. Officials at the international agency have launched emergency operations to provide food assistance to an estimated 800,000 residents in Gaza and the West Bank. They also highlight the urgent need for the safe passage of their personnel and the crucial goods they carry. With the current crisis escalating, there's a pressing need for financial support. The WFP estimates that a sum of $17.3 million is required in the upcoming 4 weeks to address the situation adequately. All borders and checkpoints connecting the West Bank and Gaza remain closed. This is further worsening the crisis by blocking essential assistance from getting through. Israel has enforced a complete blockade on the territory. The region, home to almost 2.3 million residents, has felt the brunt of this conflict. The UK says that 4 nationals who had been detained in Afghanistan on allegations of breaking the law have been released. In a statement, the UK Foreign Office expressed thanks to the Taliban-led administration for releasing its nationals. The spokesperson expressed apologies on behalf of families to the Taliban administration for any violations of the laws of the country. He did not clarify what they had been accused of. The Indian government has given police permission to prosecute famed Indian writer Arundhati Roy over a speech she made on Kashmir in 2010. According to media reports, the Lieutenant Governor of the capital, Delhi, V.K. Saxena, has given the green light for the initiation of the proceedings. The Booker Prize winner, a prominent critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, and others are accused of advocating Kashmir's secession from India. Criminal charges against Roy have been dormant for years. The move comes amid concerns about declining press freedom in India, where the country is slipping in world rankings. Saxena's orders say there is sufficient evidence to proceed against Roy and Sheikh Shaukat Hussain, former professor of international law at the Central University of Kashmir. 2 of their co-defendants, Kashmiri leader Syed Ali Shah Gilani and Syed Abdul Rahman Gilani, a Delhi University lecturer, have since passed away in the 13 years since the indictment. A media investigation points towards alleged labor abuses concerning migrant workers from poor countries in the Arabian Gulf region. The report says that workers contracted to work for Western brands in countries like Saudi Arabia have described conditions as like being in prison. The report is part of Trafficking, Inc., a joint investigation by various media outlets and the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Among the allegations are that many workers had their passports and identity documents confiscated, restricting their freedom of movement. Legal analysts point out that these practices might hint at labor trafficking, which is a grave violation of international labor standards. There are rising apprehensions about the possible involvement of prominent American and British brands in these abuses through their overseas ventures. Amazon has been criticized for engaging workers through Saudi Arabia's labor firms, which often result in lower wages and job security issues. Chuck E. Cheese and Peter Piper Pizza are alleged to have confiscated workers' passports, limiting their rights. Similarly, franchises linked to the Intercontinental Hotels Group has been pointed out for restricting workers' mobility. While all the brands in the question above have voiced their commitment to human rights, there is an evident gap in translating this into practice. Despite reforms announced in the Gulf region's labor laws, rights advocates argue that the implementation remains sketchy, leaving migrant workers vulnerable to severe abuses. That's all from our Washington, D.C. studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.